Welcome back to today's Family Connection Point. Today we're in Matthew chapter 26, verses 1 through 16, and we're talking about being a good influence. We're going to use for our object lesson a thermometer. Right here I have a digital thermometer. We put this in our kids' ears to check their temperature. And so we're going to ask our kids, what does the thermometer do? It tells you what temperature you have. And so it's kind of a reading device. It doesn't do anything except for tell you what is already there. Then we're going to ask them, what is the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat? You see, a thermostat, which we have on our wall in our living room, is something that sets the temperature. When you're cold, you can go and you can bump it up and it will make it warmer in the room. When you're hot, you can bump it down and it will make it cooler in the room. It is a change maker. It is an influencer of climate. And so what we want to help our children to understand, we want them to be a change maker. We want them to be an influencer of their friends, not to be one who just kind of goes with the flow, someone who can make positive change in their world. And so today we're going to see someone who influenced, and actually he influenced in a very negative way. In today's passage, we first see Jesus, and Jesus tells his disciples, hey guys, listen, the Passover's coming and very soon I will be crucified. In the background, the religious leaders are getting together and they're plotting to secretly take Jesus and do away with him. And so, and all of this was in accordance with God's plan. You see, Jesus actually says, I lay my life down freely. I have the power to lay it down. I have the power to take it up. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down freely. So this was all in accordance with God's plan. It's working in the background here in this story. But Jesus is in this house in Bethany of a guy named Simon who was a leper. He probably was a healed person, someone who had been touched by Jesus, who had been changed by Jesus. And we see Mary and Martha there as well, who were friends of Jesus. And Mary comes in and she has an alabaster jar full of very expensive perfume. She breaks it open and she pours it on Jesus' head, and in another passage of scripture accounting the same event says that she put it on his feet as well. And this was a very significant act. The amount of money that it would take to purchase this jar of perfume actually was 2 years' wages. And so the disciples, in this Matthew account, it says the disciples said to her, hey, what a waste. You took 2 years of wages and just poured it out and just wasted it. You could have taken that, sold it, and taken the money and met the needs of the poor and the homeless. Jesus rebuked them and said, no, she's doing the right thing. Then it says that Judas Iscariot actually goes and he betrays Jesus. He makes a deal with the religious establishment to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, which was the cost of redeeming a slave, basically the cost of a slave in that time. And what we see is an evaluation here. We see a lady who said, Jesus is worth everything. There was no amount of money that was too great for her king. But we also see an evaluation on Judas's part as well. When he looked at Jesus, he saw him as a means to attain something. He wanted money. In fact, in another account of this same passage, it says that Judas was the one who spoke up, and that the other disciples kind of just followed behind him, and he originally spoke up and said, hey, listen, you're wasting that money. You could have fed the poor, you could have fed the hungry, you could have used it for needy people. But in that passage of scripture, it also says that was never Judas's intent. He was the one who took care of the money, so he was actually skimming off the top and taking part of that money and putting it in his own pocket. You see, Jesus to Judas was just a means of attaining his own satisfaction. And in this story, we can see someone who says, hey, Jesus is worth everything. Jesus is the king. I am his servant. And then we see Judas who says, you know what? I'm the king, and Jesus exists to serve my agenda. Even today, we see the same thing happen. People who attach themselves to Jesus so that they can get what they want. And in that mindset, honestly, Jesus isn't their king. They're the king and Jesus is their servant. And there, a lot can be said for that mindset, but that's actually not what we're going to cover today. What we want to cover is this. You see, Judas was a bad influence. He actually influences Jesus' closest followers to be critical of what was going on, the worship of Jesus, this extravagant worship. They were critical. They were saying, hey, listen, you should have spent it differently. You see, bad attitudes are contagious. They're everywhere. And we're called to be a good influencer. So we want to point to our children and we want to say, hey, listen, we want you to be a change maker. We don't want you to be influenced by others. So it's really important that you are very careful who you surround yourself with. And that when you are in public and when you are around different people, that you are firm in your convictions and that you're the change maker. You're not easily swayed one way or the other. You know what you believe and why you believe it. You see, God has called us all to be influencers of culture, of our friends. But there is the potential of us to be taken away and swayed this way or that. And we want our kids to be acutely aware that there is a potential of that happening. And so for our illustration today and our lesson today, we just want to encourage our children, hey, today we see a bad example of some folks who are swayed. We want you to be aware that you could be swayed. But guess what? What a great opportunity for you to be the change maker, for you to be the influencer for Jesus Christ. That is our lesson today. I'll see you tomorrow.